On August 23, 1989, Jennifer Wilson stopped to fill up her car before a routine trip. But what she didn't know was that receipt for $12.47 would become the key to solving her own murder. It was a sweltering Wednesday summer day in Riverside, a small town in the countryside where the heat made the asphalt ripple like water, and where the biggest excitement of the week was discovering what flavor of pie Mrs. Henderson had brought to the church bazaar, the kind of place where people still left their keys in their cars, where the most serious crime in recent years had been when Tommy Peterson stole watermelon from his neighbor's backyard. An American paradise that was about to lose its innocence forever. Jennifer Wilson, 32 years old, had that kind of natural beauty that didn't need makeup to shine. Golden blonde hair that caught the sunlight, blue eyes like a summer sky, and a smile that could brighten the darkest day. Mother of 2 small children, teacher at the local elementary school, devoted wife for 8 years. That Wednesday morning, Jennifer was radiant. It was the last day of summer vacation, and she had planned a special afternoon. Pick up medicine at the pharmacy for little Tommy, 6 years old, who had an earache, and then take the children for ice cream before classes resumed. "Mommy, are you going to be long?" asked Emma, her 8-year-old daughter, while Jennifer grabbed the keys to the blue Ford Taurus from the small table in the entrance. "Not very long, sweetheart. I'm just going to fill up the car and get Tommy's antibiotic. You stay here with Daddy and be good." William Davis, her 34-year-old husband, was in the living room watching the news. Brown hair beginning to gray at the temples, reading glasses hanging around his neck, still wearing his dress shirt from work at the local bank. He looked at Jennifer with that loving smile that hadn't changed since their first date. "Are you sure you don't want me to come along?" he asked, knowing the answer but offering anyway. "No need, honey. It's quick. Joe's station, pharmacy, and back. An hour at most." Jennifer kissed William on the forehead, kissed Emma and Tommy on their chubby cheeks, and left through the front door at 4:15 p.m., carrying her brown leather purse and the car keys. Those were the last words her family would hear from her. Joe Martinez's gas station was on State Route 47, just 8 kilometers from downtown Riverside. It was one of those old 2-pump stations with a small store that sold cold sodas, snacks, and motor oil. Joe, a 45-year-old Mexican-American with a thick mustache and easy smile, knew practically everyone in town by their first name. "Afternoon, Mrs. Wilson," Joe shouted when he saw the blue Taurus approaching pump number 2. "How are the children?" "Great, Mr. Martinez. Tommy has an earache, but nothing an antibiotic won't fix." Jennifer got out of the car, leaving the engine running and the air conditioning on. The August heat was brutal. 38 degrees in the shade, and there wasn't enough shade for everyone. She wore a light yellow summer dress that danced in the hot breeze, low sandals, and a gold bracelet that William had given her for their last anniversary. "Fill it up, please," she said, running her hand through her blonde hair to move it away from her sweaty face. While Joe filled the car, Jennifer went into the small store to buy a cold Coca-Cola. The old air conditioner worked in fits and starts, but it was still a relief from the scorching heat. "Going to the downtown pharmacy?" asked Joe when she returned to the car. "Yes, to get medicine for Tommy. Then we're going for ice cream to celebrate the end of vacation." "Children grow so fast," Joe said, checking the pump meter. That was exactly $12.47. Jennifer opened her wallet and handed over a $20 bill. Joe went to the small cash register inside the store and returned with change and a white thermal paper receipt. "Here you go, Mrs. Wilson. Have a good day, and get well soon for Tommy." Thank you, Mr. Martinez. See you later. It was exactly 4:45 p.m. when Jennifer Wilson put the receipt in her purse, got into the blue Taurus, and left the gas station heading toward Central Pharmacy in the heart of Riverside. She would never get there. At 6:30 p.m., when Jennifer still hadn't returned home, William began to worry. She had said an hour at most, but more than 2 hours had already passed. "Daddy, where's Mommy?" asked Emma, looking out the living room window. "She must be talking to someone at the pharmacy, sweetheart. You know how Mommy likes to chat." But at 7:30 p.m., when the sun began to set and Jennifer still hadn't given any sign of life, William called Central Pharmacy. "No, Mr. Davis," said Margaret Brown, the pharmacist. "Your wife hasn't come here today. I've been waiting for her since 5 o'clock to deliver Tommy's antibiotic." William's stomach contracted. Jennifer never ran late without calling. Never. At 8:15 p.m., William was driving along State Route 47, looking for Jennifer's blue Taurus, his heart beating faster with each curve of the empty road. At 8:47 p.m., he found the car. The blue Ford Taurus was parked on the shoulder of the road, halfway between Joe's station and the city. Engine off, but still warm. Doors unlocked. Jennifer's purse on the passenger seat, with wallet, money, driver's license, everything intact. But Jennifer had disappeared. What disturbed William most was what was not in the car. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no indication of violence. It was as if Jennifer had simply gotten out of the car and dissolved into the hot summer air. At 9:30 p.m., with trembling hands, William called the police. "Emergency services. My wife has disappeared. I found her car abandoned on the road, but she's simply not there." And so began a mystery that would consume the small town of Riverside for 30 long years. Detective James Anderson, a 42-year-old man with gray hair and 18 years of police experience, arrived at the scene at 10:15 p.m. He had investigated missing person cases before, but never something so baffling. "Mr. Davis," he said to William, who was standing next to the Taurus, like a pillar of salt, "tell me exactly what happened." William repeated the story. Gas station, pharmacy, 1 hour at most. Anderson took meticulous notes, but one question bothered him. "Did your wife keep the gas receipt?" "Always. Jennifer is very organized with household accounts." But when they searched Jennifer's purse, when they checked every compartment of the car, when they scoured every inch of the upholstery, the gas station receipt had disappeared. Why would someone steal a receipt for $12.47? Anderson went to Joe's station the next morning. Joe confirmed that Jennifer had filled up at 4:45 p.m., that she had paid with a $20 bill, that she had received change and the receipt. "Did she seem normal?" asked Anderson. "Completely normal. Talking about taking the children for ice cream. She seemed happy." "Was anyone else at the station at that time?" Joe thought for a moment. "Robert Thompson was here, working, under a pickup truck in the back shop. But he's an employee, has worked here for 2 years. Anderson made a mental note to talk to Robert Thompson. But in the following days, the investigation hit a wall of impossibilities. Jennifer had filled up the car, had left the station at 4:45 p.m., and then had simply disappeared from the face of the earth. There were no witnesses on the road. There were no footprints at the location where the car was found. There were no signs that Jennifer had voluntarily left the vehicle. And even more mysterious, the gas receipt had completely disappeared. "It's as if someone wanted to erase all traces of her last hour of life," Anderson said to his partner, Detective Mark Young, on the third day of investigation. What none of them knew was that that small piece of thermal paper would guard deadly secrets for 3 decades. What they couldn't imagine was that the lost receipt would become the most important evidence of their careers, found buried in the most unlikely place possible. And what they definitely couldn't predict was that when the truth finally emerged, 30 years later, it would reveal a crime so close to home, so calculated and cruel, that it would shake the foundations of Little Riverside forever. Jennifer Wilson's last tank of gas cost $12.47. But the truth about her death would cost much more than anyone could imagine. The investigation into Jennifer Wilson's disappearance began with one certainty and ended with an impossibility that would defy all police logic. Detective James Anderson had seen everything in 18 years of his career. Husbands who killed wives for insurance money, wives who ran away with lovers to other states, people who faked their own kidnapping to escape debts. But he had never seen someone simply dissolve into the hot air of a summer afternoon. On the morning of August 24th, Anderson arrived at Joe Martinez's station at 7:30 a.m., carrying a cup of black coffee and a notepad already half-filled. The heat promised to be even more brutal than the previous day. The kind of heat that makes normal people commit desperate acts. "Mr. Martinez," Anderson said, showing his badge, "I need you to tell me everything about yesterday afternoon. Every detail, no matter how small it seems." Joe Martinez wiped his oily hands on a dirty rag and sighed. "Detective, I already told everything last night. Jennifer came here at 4:45 p.m., filled up the car, paid with a 20, took the change and receipt. She seemed completely normal. Did she mention where she was going? To the pharmacy to get medicine for her son. Then she was going to take the children for ice cream." Anderson scribbled in his notepad. "Was anyone else here at that time?" "Robert Thompson. He was working in the back shop, fixing the transmission of a Chevy. I need to talk to him." Joe pointed to a small building behind the main station. "He arrives at 8 a.m. Good mechanic. Has worked here for 2 years. Never caused problems." Anderson walked to the shop while waiting for Robert to arrive. It was a cramped and dirty space, with scattered tools and a strong smell of burned oil. 2 service bays. One occupied by a red Ford pickup with the hood open. At 8:15 a.m., a man of approximately 30 years old came walking down the road. Dark, oily hair, unshaven, mechanic's overalls already stained. Before even starting work. Robert Thompson. "Mr. Thompson? Detective Anderson. I need to ask some questions about yesterday afternoon." Robert stopped abruptly, a strange expression crossing his face. "About what?" "Jennifer Wilson disappeared after filling up here yesterday. You were working at that time?" "Ah, yes. I was fixing a transmission." Robert avoided eye contact. "But I didn't see anything. I was focused on the work. Didn't even leave the shop? Didn't go to the bathroom? Didn't get water?" "Maybe. I don't remember exactly. It was a normal day?" Anderson noticed that Robert's hands were trembling slightly. "Do you know Mrs. Wilson?" "Everyone knows everyone here. She teaches the town's children." "Have you talked before?" "No, not directly. She always talked to Joe, not me." There was something in Robert's body language that bothered Anderson. The way he averted his gaze, how his answers were evasive, how he seemed too nervous for a routine conversation. "Mr. Thompson, where were you between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. yesterday?" "Here, working until 6:30 p.m., like always." "Can anyone confirm this?" Robert hesitated for a second too long. Joe was here until about 6 p.m. After that, I stayed alone finishing the job. Anderson wrote everything down, but part of his police instinct was screaming that something wasn't right. At 10 a.m., Anderson and his partner, Detective Mark Young, returned to the location where Jennifer's car had been found. Second daylight. The scene seemed even more bizarre. "Explain something to me," said Young, a red-haired 38-year-old man with the manner of someone who doesn't impress easily. Jennifer leaves the station at 4:45 p.m. The car is found here at 8:47 p.m. That's 4 hours. What happened in those 4 hours? "That's the million-dollar question," Anderson replied, walking in circles around the location where the Taurus had been found. The road between Joe's station and downtown Riverside was perfectly straight. 8 kilometers of asphalt, without any significant curves. There were no houses, no other businesses, just cornfields on both sides of the road. "If someone forced her to stop," Young continued, "where are the skid marks? Where are the signs of struggle?" Anderson pointed to the ground around the car. Exactly. The car was perfectly positioned on the shoulder, as if she had stopped voluntarily. "But why would she stop here? There's nothing, just corn as far as the eye can see." They called the criminal investigation team to examine the vehicle's interior more thoroughly. But after 5 hours of microscopic analysis, the technicians found absolutely nothing abnormal. No strange fingerprints, no hair that wasn't Jennifer's or her family's, no unknown fabric fibers, no drops of blood, no signs of violence. "It's like she simply evaporated," said the chief technician, Tony Rodriguez, wiping sweat from his forehead. "In 15 years, doing this, I've never seen a scene so clean." But the most disturbing discovery came when they verified Jennifer's last confirmed location. Anderson returned to Joe's station with a specific question. "Mr. Martinez, which direction did Jennifer take when she left here?" "To the left, toward the city. Same direction she always takes." "Are you absolutely certain?" "Certain. I saw her leave, waved, when she passed by the store window." Anderson looked at the road. From the station to the city, it was 8 kilometers in a straight line. The car was found at kilometer 4, exactly halfway. "Mr. Martinez, how long does it normally take to get to the city from here?" "About 8-10 minutes driving normally." Anderson did the math. Jennifer left at 4:45 p.m. Should have arrived in the city by 4:55 p.m. at the latest. But her car was found on the road at 8:47 p.m. Where had she been for more than 3 hours? On the third day of investigation, Anderson made a decision that would change everything. He brought in the tracking dogs. Duke, a 7-year-old bloodhound specialized in missing persons, arrived with his trainer, Sergeant Patricia Lewis. Duke had found 89 people in 6 years of service. His success rate was practically perfect. They started at Jennifer's Taurus driver's seat. Duke sniffed the seat, the steering wheel, her purse that was still in the car. His eyes lit up with that sharp canine intelligence. He had captured Jennifer Wilson's unique scent. He howled once, signaled that he was ready. The dog followed the trail from the car to the road, sniffed the asphalt where Jennifer had walked after leaving the vehicle. The trail was clear, was fresh. Duke was confident. But then, 50 meters from the car, something impossible happened. Duke stopped completely. He sniffed the ground in desperate circles, sniffed the air with growing intensity, returned to the same spot. He howled, a sound of frustration that Lewis had never heard him make. "What's happening?" asked Anderson. Lewis shook her head, perplexed. "The trail simply ends. It's as if Jennifer had stopped existing, exactly at this point on the road. They brought another dog, then another. All three had the same impossible reaction. Jennifer Wilson's trail led 50 meters beyond her abandoned car, and then disappeared completely. In 12 years training search dogs, Lewis said to Anderson that afternoon, "I've never seen anything like this. It's physically impossible for a human trail to simply stop in the middle of an open road." But it had stopped. For 2 weeks, the investigation completely consumed Riverside. 300 volunteers searched every cornfield, every abandoned barn, every artesian well within a 30-kilometer radius. State Guard helicopters flew over the region for days. Divers explored all the streams and ponds in the area. William Davis offered a $25,000 reward, a fortune for a small town in 1989. The police phone rang constantly with false leads and impossible sightings, but all leads led nowhere. The most intriguing came from an elderly woman, Dorothy Allen, who lived 2 kilometers from Joe's station. "Detective," she said to Anderson in the second week, "I saw something strange the afternoon that young woman disappeared." "What exactly, Mrs. Allen?" "I was watering my garden. Must have been around 5:30 p.m., and I saw a pickup truck passing very fast on the road. Faster than normal." "What kind of pickup truck?" "Red Ford. One of those old ones. 70s, maybe." Anderson felt his stomach tighten. "Did you see who was driving?" "I couldn't see well, but there seemed to be 2 people in the cab." Anderson checked his notes. The red Ford pickup that Robert Thompson was fixing in Joe's shop. But when he returned to the station to verify, Joe confirmed that the pickup had been fixed and returned to the owner on the morning of August 24th, one day after Jennifer's disappearance. "Mr. Martinez, are you sure of the date?" "Absolute. The owner, Mr. Peterson, picked up the pickup on Thursday morning. I even have the receipt here." Anderson examined the document. The date was clear: August 24th, 1989. But then, what red Ford pickup had Dorothy Allen seen on the afternoon of the disappearance? "Mr. Martinez, does Robert Thompson have any vehicle of his own?" Joe thought for a moment. "He rides a bicycle to work. Lives only about 3 kilometers from here. I've never seen him with a car of his own." Anderson felt he was missing something important, some crucial piece of the puzzle. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't connect the dots. In the third week, the investigation officially hit a dead end. "It's the most frustrating case of my career," Anderson admitted to reporters. "Jennifer Wilson filled up her Fiat car at 4:45 p.m. and then simply disappeared, as if she had dissolved on the road." What he didn't know was that the answer was buried a few meters from where he had started his investigation. What none of them could imagine was that a simple thermal paper receipt would guard deadly secrets for 30 years, until the demolition itself forced the truth to emerge. And what they definitely couldn't predict was that when the truth finally came to light, it would reveal a crime so calculated, so close, and so perfectly hidden that it would forever change how they looked at apparently innocent people. Jennifer Wilson had dissolved on the road that hot August afternoon, but the truth about how that happened was just waiting for the right moment to emerge, along with the receipt that would prove who was really responsible for her death. 30 years is enough time for a city to forget its ghosts, for wounds to heal, for life to move forward and bury its darkest mysteries. But William Davis never forgot, never healed, never completely moved forward. In July 2019, at 62 years old, William still lived in the same house where he had raised Emma and Tommy after Jennifer's disappearance. His hair now completely gray, deep wrinkles marking 3 decades of silent mourning. But his eyes still held the same determination of the young father who had refused to accept that his wife had simply disappeared without explanation. Emma, now 38 years old and mother of 2 children, visited her father every Sunday. Tommy, at 36, had become a doctor and lived in Chicago, but called religiously every week. Both had grown up with their mother's absence as an open wound that never completely healed. "Dad," Emma said on that hot July Sunday, sitting in the same kitchen where Jennifer had prepared breakfast for the last time, "you need to stop blaming yourself. It wasn't your fault." William looked out the kitchen window, toward State Route 47, where the silhouette of old Joe Martinez's station was still visible in the distance. "If I had insisted on going along that day—" "Dad, stop." Mom was doing something she did hundreds of times. There was no way to predict. But William couldn't stop thinking about what if? What if he had gone along? What if he had insisted more? What if Jennifer had called back? "The station is going to be demolished next week," he said, changing the subject. "They're going to build a modern station in its place." Emma sighed. She knew her father passed by old Joe's station at least 3 times a week, as if he still expected to find clues that the investigations had missed. "Maybe it's good," she said gently. "Maybe it will help you to forget? To find peace." William shook his head. "I won't have peace until I know what happened to your mother." On Monday, July 15th, 2019, a yellow excavator arrived at old Joe Martinez's gas station. The place had been abandoned for 5 years, since the new highway had diverted traffic to another route. The rusted pumps, broken store windows, vegetation growing through cracks in the concrete. Carlos Rivera, supervisor of the demolition crew, was 45 years old with 20 years of experience destroying old structures. But he had never demolished a location that carried so many dark memories for a community. "Everyone in town knows the story," he said to his crew. "The our teacher who disappeared here in '89, we're going to work with respect." The demolition began with the main store. The excavator brought down the exterior walls with ease. The roof collapsed in a cloud of dust and debris, decades of history turning into rubble. But it was when they began working on the back area, where the old mechanic shop used to be, that they made a discovery that would change everything. Miguel Santos, excavator operator, was removing the concrete slab behind the shop when the machine hit something metallic buried in the soil. "Carlos!" he shouted, turning off the engine. "There's something down here." Rivera went down to examine. Partially exposed by the excavation was a metal box the size of a shoebox, covered by 3 decades of earth and rust. "What the hell is this?" Rivera murmured, kneeling beside the discovery. The box was buried approximately 1 meter deep, exactly underneath where the tool bench used to be in the shop. Someone had deliberately hidden that there, and then built over it. "Boss," said Santos, "do you think we should call the police?" Rivera hesitated. It could be anything. Hidden money, old documents, even drugs that someone had buried decades ago. But there was something about the location, about the care with which the box had been hidden, that made his instinct scream that this was important. "Yes," he said finally. "Better call the authorities." 2 hours later, Detective Lisa Martinez, unrelated to Joe Martinez, arrived at the scene. At 48 years old, with 22 years of police experience, she had taken over the Jennifer Wilson case when she moved to Riverside in 2010. The file was on her desk, officially archived as Missing Person, Cold Case, but she revisited it at least once a year. "Mr. Rivera," she said, examining the metal box still partially buried, "did you touch anything?" "No, ma'am. We called you as soon as we found it." Martinez put on latex gloves and carefully removed the box from the soil. It was heavy, heavier than it appeared. The lid was secured by a simple latch, but rust made it difficult to open. "Let's take it to the station," she said. "I need to open this in a controlled environment." An hour later, in the evidence room of Riverside Police Station, Martinez finally managed to open the metal box. What she found inside made the world stop. Hundreds of thermal paper receipts, some still legible, others faded by time. Gas receipts, motor oil, sodas, 3 decades of transactions from Joe Martinez's station, meticulously kept in chronological order. Why would someone keep receipts for so long? And more importantly, why bury them? Martinez began examining the receipts one by one, using tweezers and a magnifying glass. Most were from routine transactions: $10 for gas, $5 for oil, $2 for Coca-Cola. But then, in the middle of the pile, she found something that made her heart race. A receipt dated August 23, 1989. Gasoline, $12.47. The last receipt that Jennifer Wilson had received. "My God," Martinez whispered, her hands trembling slightly. But there was something more. On the back of the receipt, in faded but still legible handwriting, someone had written, "Woman heading to pharmacy, blue car, license plate RVD 247. RVD 247 was the license plate of Jennifer Wilson's Ford Taurus. Martinez sat heavily in the chair. After 30 years. Finally, there was a real clue. Someone had written information about Jennifer on the back of her own receipt, and then had hidden this evidence buried behind the station. But who? The handwriting was clearly masculine, the writing of someone accustomed to writing quickly, perhaps making work notes. Martinez compared it with documents from the case file. Joe Martinez kept meticulous records of his business. There were examples of his handwriting in all the reports he had given to police in 1989. It was a perfect match. Joe Martinez had written that annotation on the back of Jennifer Wilson's receipt. But why would Joe write "woman heading to pharmacy" on Jennifer's receipt? He knew her name. Why refer to her as woman? And more importantly, why hide this information from police during the entire 1989 investigation? Martinez checked the files. Joe Martinez had died of a heart attack in 1995, taking any secret he had to the grave. But there were other people who worked at the station in 1989. Robert Thompson. Martinez examined the receipt under ultraviolet light. Modern forensic techniques could reveal details that were impossible to detect in 1989. What she discovered left her breathless. Besides Joe Martinez's handwriting on the back, there were partial fingerprints on the receipt. Prints that belonged neither to Joe nor to Jennifer. Prints from a third person who had handled that receipt. "Dr. Peterson," Martinez said to the forensic technician, "I need you to run these prints through the national system. Maximum priority." "Sure, but they're partial prints. Might not give an exact match." "Try anyway." While waiting for results, Martinez began reconstructing the events of August 23, 1989. Jennifer arrives at the station at 4:45 p.m. Joe serves her, knows her, talks normally. Jennifer pays, receives the receipt, and leaves. But after she leaves, Joe writes a strange annotation on the back of a copy of the receipt. Why would he do this? Unless he wasn't annotating for himself. Unless he was annotating for someone else. Martinez felt a chill run up her spine. What if Joe wasn't the original author of the annotation? What if someone had asked him to write down that information? What if Robert Thompson had asked Joe to note where Jennifer was going, and what type of car she was driving, and what the license plate was? Detective Martinez, the phone rang on her desk. It was Dr. Peterson from the forensic lab. Did you find something? I did. The fingerprints gave a partial match in the system. Robert Thompson, arrested for domestic violence in Phoenix, Arizona, in 2003. Current address, 1247 Oak Street, Riverside. Martinez almost dropped the phone. Robert Thompson still lived in Riverside, just 15 blocks from the police station. For 30 years, Jennifer Wilson's killer had lived in the same city where he had committed the crime, walking the same streets, shopping at the same store, maybe even greeting William Davis on the street. Dr. Peterson, Martinez said, trying to control the excitement in her voice, I need you to process this receipt for DNA too. If Thompson handled this paper, he might have left genetic material. Already preparing. Results in 48 hours. Martinez hung up the phone and looked at the receipt inside the evidence bag. That small piece of thermal paper had guarded secrets for 30 years, waiting patiently to reveal the truth about what really happened to Jennifer Wilson that August afternoon. Joe Martinez had written down information about Jennifer at Robert Thompson's request. Thompson had used that information to follow Jennifer when she left the station. And then he had hidden the receipt buried behind the shop, along with hundreds of other receipts to camouflage the evidence. It was the almost perfect crime, except for one detail that Thompson hadn't foreseen. 30 years later, a yellow excavator would destroy the hiding place he thought was permanent, and a simple receipt for $12.47 would finally tell the truth about Jennifer Wilson's murder. The truth that would emerge would be more shocking than anyone in Riverside could imagine, because Robert Thompson hadn't killed Jennifer by chance. It hadn't been a crime of opportunity. It hadn't been a robbery gone wrong. It had been calculated, premeditated, and much closer to home than anyone could ever suspect. The buried receipt was about to reveal not only who had killed Jennifer Wilson, but why she really had to die. The phone at William Davis's house rang at 7:15 a.m. on July 19, 2019. He was having coffee in the kitchen, reading the local newspaper that carried a small note about the demolition of Joe Martinez's station, when the shrill sound made him spill hot coffee on the table. Mr. Davis, this is Detective Lisa Martinez. I need you to come to the station immediately. We have significant developments in your wife's case. William dropped the cup on the floor. After 30 years of silence, after 3 decades of unanswered questions, finally, there was news about Jennifer. What kind of developments? He managed to ask, his voice hoarse with emotion. Mr. Davis, I prefer to explain in person. Can you come now? An hour later, William was sitting in the conference room of Riverside Police Station, looking at a table covered with evidence he hadn't seen in 30 years. Photos of Jennifer's car, reports from the original investigation, and, in the center of everything, a small plastic bag containing a faded receipt. Mr. Davis, said Martinez, sitting across from him, we found evidence buried at the old gas station. Evidence that points directly to your wife's killer. Killer? William repeated the word as if it were from another language. For 30 years, he had clung to the hope that Jennifer was alive somewhere, that she had lost her memory, that she would come home one day. Mr. Davis, your wife was murdered on the afternoon of August 23rd, 1989, and we know who did it. Martinez opened the folder and showed the photo of a man of approximately 60 years old. Sparse gray hair, thin, face marked by time, small and evasive eyes. Robert Thompson. He worked as a mechanic at Joe Martinez's station in 1989. His DNA was found on the receipt your wife received. The same receipt he hid buried for 30 years. William studied the photo. The face was vaguely familiar. Maybe he had seen him around town over the years, without knowing he was looking at his wife's killer. How did you find him after so long? He never left Riverside, Mr. Davis. For 30 years, Robert Thompson lived 15 blocks from our station, working at local shops, going unnoticed, believing he had committed the perfect crime. Martinez turned the page of the report. But it wasn't perfect. Last night, our team arrested Thompson at his house. When confronted with the evidence, when we showed him the receipt and explained about the DNA, he confessed everything. Robert Thompson's complete confession was recorded on video and audio. William watched every second, heard every word, absorbed every detail of the revelation that finally explained what had happened to Jennifer that terrible summer afternoon. On the monitor screen, Thompson looked like a man destroyed by the weight of 3 decades carrying a deadly secret. His shoulders hunched, his hands shaking uncontrollably, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't plan to kill her at first," he said, avoiding looking directly at the camera. "But I was obsessed with Jennifer Wilson for years." Detective Martinez was sitting across the table. "Explain this obsession, Robert." Thompson took a deep breath, as if preparing to confess the darkest sin of his soul. "Jennifer taught my niece at elementary school. I saw her every day when I went to pick up the girl. Always so beautiful. Always so kind to the children. I started to follow her." William felt nausea rising in his throat. This monster had stalked Jennifer, had turned her kindness into an object of sick obsession. "How long did you follow her?" "Months. I knew her routine, knew what time she left home, what day she went to the market, what gas station she used." Thompson made a painful pause. "I imagined that one day she would notice me, would talk to me, maybe what? Maybe want me." Martinez leaned forward. "So tell me what happened on August 23rd, 1989. Thompson closed his eyes, as if reliving that terrible moment. "Jennifer came to the station like she always did. But that day, Joe mentioned she was going to the pharmacy after. I asked him to write down on the receipt where she was going. Said it was to check if she needed anything from town. Joe Martinez did this. Why? He thought I was being kind, trying to help a customer. Joe was always too naive." William clenched his fists. Jennifer had trusted people, had believed in human goodness, and that had been used against her. Continue. "After Jennifer left, I told Joe I was going to finish the pickup job, but actually, I took the pickup that was ready and left to follow her." "The red Ford pickup that Dorothy Allen saw?" "Yes. I knew Jennifer would take the main road, so I took a shortcut through the cornfields to get ahead of her." Martinez checked her notes. "You forced her to stop on the road?" "I pretended the pickup had broken down, waved for her to stop, said I needed help. Jennifer was too good. always helped anyone in need. Tears began rolling down William's face. He could imagine Jennifer stopping to help a stranger in distress, not knowing she was walking straight into a trap. What happened when she stopped? I said I liked her, that I had been watching her for months, that I wanted to date her. Thompson's voice broke. Jennifer got scared, said she was married, had children, that I was being inappropriate. And then she tried to go back to the car. I grabbed her, not to hurt her, just to make her listen to me. But she screamed, fought against me. We fell. She hit her head on a rock. William closed his eyes, forcing himself to continue listening. He needed to know the whole truth, no matter how painful it was. Jennifer was unconscious, bleeding. I could have called an ambulance, could have saved her, but I was scared, knew I would be arrested. So you killed her deliberately. I used my belt to finish it. Then I carried her body to the pickup, took her to an isolated field 20 kilometers away, buried her deep. The room fell into absolute silence for several seconds. And the receipt? I went back to the station, got the receipt that Joe had written on, buried it along with hundreds of other old receipts behind the shop. I thought no one would ever look there. Why keep the other receipts too? To camouflage. If someone found them, they would think it was just Joe being too organized with business papers. Martinez asked her final question. Robert, why did you never confess before? Why carry this secret for 30 years? Thompson looked directly at the camera for the first time. Because I'm a coward. Because I destroyed a family. Stole a mother from her children. A wife from her husband. Because I lived 30 years knowing I had killed the kindest person I ever met. 6 months later, Robert Thompson was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. At 60 years old, he would die behind bars, finally paying for the heinous crime he had committed 3 decades earlier. The trial attracted national attention. Reporters from across the country came to Riverside to cover the extraordinary story of the gas receipt that had solved a murder after 30 years of mystery. But for William, it wasn't about fame or media attention. It was exclusively about justice. It was about finally being able to bury his wife with the dignity she deserved. During the subsequent investigation, police found Jennifer's body exactly where Thompson had indicated. After 30 years buried in an isolated field, she could finally come home. On December 15, 2019, exactly 30 years and 4 months after buying flowers for an empty grave, William could finally bury Jennifer Wilson's remains. The ceremony was small, but deeply meaningful. Emma and Tommy, now adults, brought the grandchildren Jennifer had never known. Students she had taught decades ago came to pay their last respects. The entire town of Riverside stopped to honor the teacher who had touched so many lives. Reverend Michael Peterson, who had officiated William and Jennifer's wedding 32 years before, conducted the funeral service with words of love, forgiveness, and hope. Jennifer Wilson was taken from us by an act of pure evil, he said, his voice echoing through the small packed church. But her legacy of kindness, her dedication to children, her love for family, that can never be stolen or destroyed. As the coffin was slowly lowered into the earth under a blue winter sky, William gently held a copy of the gas receipt. That small piece of paper that had guarded secrets for 30 years. $12.47, he whispered, tears flowing freely down his face. You were always careful with every penny, always organized all the receipts. Even after death, you found a way to give us the answers we needed. After everyone else had left, William stayed, alone beside the grave for more than an hour. He placed the copy of the receipt on the fresh earth, beside a bouquet of yellow roses, Jennifer's favorite flowers. "Now you can rest in peace, my eternal love," he said, his voice breaking with 3 decades of pain finally being released. "The man who hurt you has paid for what he did. The truth has come to light, and you are finally home." As he walked slowly back to the car, William felt something he hadn't experienced in 30 years, a deep and true peace. Emma was waiting for him in the parking lot, her own eyes red with tears. "How do you feel, Dad?" William looked one last time at the grave where Jennifer now rested. "I feel like I can start living again. Your mother wouldn't want me to spend the rest of my life trapped in the past. She would be proud of how you never gave up searching for the truth. And she would be proud of the extraordinary children you became, the beautiful grandchildren she has, the family we built, even in her absence. Sometimes the truth takes decades to emerge. Sometimes a simple thermal paper receipt can speak louder than any witness or evidence. And sometimes justice arrives exactly when it needs to arrive, even if it takes 30 years. Jennifer Wilson was finally resting in peace. Robert Thompson would finally pay for what he had done. Jennifer's last tank of gas cost $12.47, but the receipt that proved who had killed her, that was priceless. It was the most valuable evidence a grieving family could ask for. The truth finally revealed, bringing justice and allowing love to transcend even the cruelest death.